Hello and welcome to the weekly Dartcast. I'm Ben the Groper Roper and you're listening to my darting teammate Alex the Spectacle Wonder 131 Moss. 180!
Hello and welcome to the weekly Dartscast. I'm Alex Moss and alongside me my co-host, a man who one day hopes to hear Nigel Pearson describing his playing quite beautifully on the hockey it is. Burton, DeWitt, Dartsmas is over for another year, but how are you holding up?
It's that normal post-Dartsmas blues that have just taken over me, not to mention the cold weather here, the snow. But no, I'm doing all right despite that. I haven't slept on the ice, even though I think you're stealing the Strava King title from me since I can't go running right now due to the weather. But how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good, thank you very much. Good to chat again and good to look back on another World Championship because we've just had another one in the books, the PDC version of the World Championship, and Peter Wright becoming a two-time World Champion, beating Michael Smith in Monday's final 7-5, and he joins fellow Scots Jockey Wilson and Gary Anderson on 2 world titles. Does this make Peter the best Scottish player of all time?
Ooh. And we talked a little bit online about this. I think that's part of why it's on the list right now. And he's closed the gap significantly on Gary Anderson, and maybe even more than I thought he would have just in winning this event, because it's how he went about winning it. And not just that, how he went about those last 10 legs, averaging nearly 114. Okay, Michael Smith dropped off a little bit, and Michael Smith didn't put pressure on him from 2-0 up in the 10th set, where if he'd been able to throw in a good leg in any of those, he may have won, and may have won that set at least to go up 6-4, and who knows what would have happened. But Peter Wright didn't do anything wrong for 10 legs. Peter Wright didn't have a leg that went more than 15 darts. He's shown that he's added something to his repertoire that wasn't there before. It wasn't there before he was able to beat Michael Van Gerwen 2 years ago. And a lot of that does come with confidence. But if you look at what the all-time greats have managed to do, what Phil Taylor is able to do when he was at his best, what Michael Van Gerwen was able to do for a good 4 or 5 years, what Gary Anderson was able to do for a couple years. And that's be able to win regardless about what your opponent does and regardless about what you do on the day. Finding the way to win, to be able to scrap out a match when you're, or let me scratch that, to scrap out a tournament when you're not at your best, like Peter Wright did at the Players' Championship finals a few weeks ago, to be able to just bamboozle and pummel your opponents into submission and into confusion, like he did against Michael Van Gerwen at the match play 6 months ago, when he averaged about 110 in a long form match. Granted, he just averaged 114 over 10 legs. Not as long as first to 16, but still shows the standard he can do against world-class opponents. There was nothing Michael Van Gerwen could do in Blackpool because Peter Wright was playing at that level that very few have been able to do. But also to be able to lift your game from nowhere like he did from 5-4 down and 2-love down in that 10th set, and be able to go from a player who's looking clearly the second best player on the day, and like he doesn't have what it's going to take to be able to just out of nowhere find those gears. All of those 3 things that I just said are things that we hadn't seen from him before, and we hadn't seen from almost anyone before. And they're the things that legends do, to be able to win an entire tournament when you're so far off your best, to be able to destroy your opponents for an entire tournament, or to be able to just lift your game out of nowhere when it's needed the most to be able to win the biggest title in world darts. That has now elevated Peter Wright not just into the top 10 players of all time, but into a true legend tier of players like Phil Taylor, Michael Van Gerwen, and Gary Anderson. There's a couple others that you can throw in there as well. Raymond van Barneveld at his best, obviously. And then you go back, Eric Bristow and few other players. I can't comment as much on whether John Lowe could have done that because I didn't see John Lowe day in, day out. I've seen some video highlights. But at least from players from the last 15 years, there's not many that have been able to do all 3 of those things. Peter Wright can, and now his accomplishments and his CV is not that far off from Gary Anderson's. He might not be the best Scottish player right now, but it might not be long before he will be, because he's catching up to everything Gary has done, and he's playing at such a higher level than Gary right now. And you think pretty soon he'll catch him, and there's no reason to think he won't blow right on by.
What a question to start 2022 with. A question, I'll be honest, I didn't expect to be answering, because on our last episode, I did back Peter Wright to make the final, but I did have Going Price to defend the title. But it is Peter Wright who's not beaten Going Price on the hockey, but he has beaten him to becoming a two-time world champion, and now having those 2 world titles on his CV, like you say, that really does propel him into that top 10 of all time conversation. And we've discussed it a few times in the last 2 years since Peter Wright's gone from having 1 TV ranking title to now 6, and that's 4 players in the PDC that have done that: Phil Taylor, James Wade, Michael Van Gogh, and Peter Wright as well. But I like the question, and Scotland 3 double world champions now with Jockey, Gary and Peter, the top 3 Scottish players of all time. I don't think that's really up for debate. I think they are the top 3 to come from Scotland, but it is hard to compare eras. But if we're comparing Gary Anderson and Peter Wright, as you say, they've got quite similar CVs now. They've both got the 2 world titles. They've both got a world match play. They've both got a Players' Championship finals and a UK Open title. Peter's got a European Championship, but where it kind of switches a little bit is Gary Anderson having those 2 Premier League titles, and 2 titles I want to mention as well from his BDO days in 2007, winning the International Darts League and the World Darts Trophy, 2 events which were cross-code events. They had BDO and PDC players, and he beat Phil Taylor in the final, which was a best of 13 sets. So those achievements kind of get missed a little bit given the longevity that Gary Anderson has in the game. And I think that's why I'm just giving him the edge at the moment over Peter Wright. But I think it is close, and take nothing away from Peter Wright, because what he's been able to do in his career, which you go back 15 years, didn't look like it was ever going to happen. He wasn't playing darts 15 years ago. It's funny, we talk about longevity. Peter Wright's World Championship debut, 1995, Gary Anderson's 2002. But of course, Peter Wright didn't make another World Championship until 2010. Gary Anderson's been in 21 consecutive World Championships now. But what Peter Wright's done since he's come back, his first year on the tour, 2008, picking up £1,200 in prize money, and now he's the first player to twice pick up that £500,000 cheque, the biggest prize in darts. He's picked up twice. It's an incredible story, and the best Scottish player ever. Again, I think I have Gary Anderson ahead of Peter Wright, but you look at what Peter Wright could go on to achieve if he carries on the way he's going this year. The world number 1 spot, him and Going Price are very close now. That could even change as early as next month, and Peter's already got his eye on the Premier League. That's a title he wants to tick off. If he ticks off both of those things this year, I think the gap closes, maybe completely, I don't know. But I think, yeah, Peter Wright, if he carries on the form he's going, he's got a real chance of finishing as the best Scottish player, and maybe even a top 5 of all-time player.
Somewhere Les Wallace is sitting wondering why he's getting no respect in this conversation. But let's talk about the beaten finalists. It's our question of the week. Michael Smith, for the 6th time, has now been a runner-up in a major event. Closest he's come at the World Championships, and second closest he's come after the Masters a couple years ago, where he missed darts to win it. Will, though, Michael Smith win that first major sometime this year?
Yeah, this is the big question. And looking at our poll at the moment, it's going to be running for the rest of the week. So get involved. We've got 57% of you going with yes, 43% of you going with no. And I guess it is easy to say straight after these events, when someone has lost a final and come so close to doing it, that they are going to get over the line this year. And Peter Wright said it himself, you know, the guy that produced that stunning burst of legs to win 9 of the last 10 to take the title from underneath Michael Smith's nose. He said after the final that once he gets one major, he's going to trounce everyone. Now, whether he does that, I'm not so sure, but I do think that first major title is probably closer now than it's ever been before. And I know he's mismatched darts to win major titles before, other titles on TV before, but I really do think that he is getting closer now. And I was listening to the TalkSport coverage before the start of the final. Chris Mason called him Michael Smith 2.0, and we spoke about it on our last show before the quarterfinals, the win that Michael had against Johnny Clayton, a match of the year contender. There was a growing sense that this was going to be his time, and he backs it up with a win against Going Price in the next round, 5-4, and another deciding set, knocks off James Wade 6-3 to make the final. And the final itself, going 2-0 down, coming back, taking the lead, the position that he was in, 5-4 up in sets, 2-0 up, and then we see that 113 average from Peter Wright. Michael himself didn't drop off too much, did he? 98, 99 average for those last 10 legs. Had a few shots at the ball, a dart at tops, but aside from that, didn't manage to carve out any real opportunities at doubles to stop that barrage that was coming at him from Peter Wright. But I think he is going to be really disappointed with this defeat, and it'll probably hurt more than those finals that he did miss the match starts in, because he said it in multiple interviews that the World Championship is the dream for him, that title is the one that he wants. He works 12 months of the year towards that event, and to be 4 legs away from winning it's going to hurt for a little while. But I think once the dust settles, he should look back on these last 3 weeks, and I hope he does. He'll look back on the run with a lot of positives to take, not just from the run at Ali Pali, but the last 6 months he has put himself back in the mix as a genuine contender to win these major titles, because that was his first TV final, a singles final in almost 2 years. The Masters 2020, he's not been in a TV singles final since then until yesterday. So it's been probably the longest time he's been without a big final like that since his first one in the Premier League. So he's had some hard times, but he's come back and he is looking, I think, better than ever before. And to beat Johnny Clayton, going Price back-to-back games in a World Championship, to be 2 sets away from the World Championship, I think his time is going to come this year, and it may be a weekend event. It may be the Masters or the UK Open, but we've also seen from this World Championship that the longer events that go over a week, he can produce it as well. It's just that final hurdle, and hopefully there'll be someone at the end of it that doesn't average 113 for the last 10 legs, and maybe he does get that little bit of fortune, or maybe he produces that 113 average. But yeah, I think he's closer now than ever, and if I was to be a betting man, I'd be backing him to do it this year.
Yeah, I am in full agreement. And you go back to when he was 5-4, 2-0 up. And that was where he had the opportunity. And he didn't play his best for a few legs. He didn't play poorly, but he didn't play well. And Peter Wright upped his game. But after that, he didn't do much wrong. He just ran into someone playing better. And Michael Smith continued playing at a level that for most of that match, after falling 2-0 behind, would have been enough to get him over the line, and would have most likely led to that championship. But those 3 legs are what let him down. But he is a different player than he was before. He's shown it. If the player that he was before wouldn't have followed that win over Johnny Clayton by another win over Gerwin Price, and then followed that up with another win over James Wade, who played fairly well in that match. And Wade played easily his best match of the tournament. That's not saying much, because despite making the semifinals, Wade did not play at his best. But he played the best that he did all tournament against Michael Smith, and threatened to fight back in that match. But Michael Smith didn't let him, and Michael Smith got over that line, because this is a different Michael Smith. This is a Michael Smith now that looks like a world champion, looks like a major champion. And it took someone who was playing at his level for an entire tournament to stop him. You ended up with a match between the 2 best players over the fortnight, over the 16 days. And when it was all said and done, one of them just managed to get over the line because one of them would have had to. Someone had to win that match. It happened to be Peter Wright because he lifted his game at the right moments. Michael Smith lifted his game at the right moments in 3 other matches. And eventually he will not run into someone like Peter Wright who's doing that exact same thing back at him. And when will that be? Like you said, it could be at one of those weekend events. It could be at the Masters. It could be at the UK Open. But he is now ready to do that. And that will happen this year. Michael Smith I wasn't planning to say as a future major champion, a future world champion, because I thought he would be already after beating Johnny Clayton, after beating Gerwin Price. I thought this was his tournament. His tournament is not far off. He will win his first major this year. It's my early guarantee for tip of the year, because he will. Although really how much of a tip it is it when he's been that close? But he will. I'm guaranteeing it. He will win his first major this year. In fact, I'm going to go a step further. He's going to win his second major this year. That's also a guarantee.
Loving the early tips of the year. Well, let's move on to our first guest on this week's show, and it is the man who has just become a 2-time world champion. Here's our chat with Peter Wright. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the newly crowned 2-time world champion, Peter Wright. Thanks for the time, Peter. How are you doing?
I'm very good, mate. Very good, thank you. It's good to be world champion again. To have Sid back in the house.
I'm sure it is. Well, we spoke the day after your first world title win 2 years ago, and you said it sounded pretty good being called a world champion. What does it sound like being referred to as a two-time world champion now?
Well, obviously it's even better, isn't it? Just to win it once is great. Never mind winning it twice. But, I feel like I can carry on. But obviously there's plenty of people out there who will try and stop me. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this year, obviously, because everyone, 90% of people or 80% of people have had injections and everything, so it shouldn't be nowhere near as bad as lockdown like it was, when I was last time champion, where I didn't get really to celebrate it properly and dragged around as world champion.
Fingers crossed for that. I remember you also saying you celebrated with a nice cup of tea the night you won the first one. Was it the same for this one, or did you go for something a bit stronger?
This time it was a cup of Yorkshire tea and a pot noodle, and one bean breville as well, and that was it.
Very nice. We'll come back to this winner a bit later, and rewind back to when we last spoke, just after your world match play, when you said before that you'd win the match play and the worlds. Why were you so confident you'd do the double of those two events?
Just because I've focused on them, because obviously winning the worlds and not winning anything else, people might go, you ain't won the match play, which is one of the best tournaments in the world as well as, So obviously I knew that I had the experience of being in a final of it before and getting to a few semi-finals and quarter-finals of it. So I've always liked the tournament and the venue and everything. So it's just like I knew deep down if I put the hard work in and focused to get up to that tournament and focus for it and everything, I had a really good chance of winning the match play. And obviously I know what it takes to win the World Championships as well, obviously. So I just put that into play as well as before this World Championships.
Well, after the match play, the next TV title that came your way was the World Cup. You told us you'd be back representing Scotland, but you weren't sure if Gary Anderson would join you. How close was he to playing, or was it the travelling that put him off?
I'm not sure. I can't answer that question really, but I think he was. He was all for it when we was talking a couple of months before that, or a month before at least, something like that. He was up for it, and I think so. It must be something drastic for him not to pull out, because obviously he loved winning it, together first time, and he would have wanted to go back and try and pick it up again, but unfortunately something else come up.
John Henderson took his place, and for a lot of neutral fans, seeing John Henderson win his first PDC title by winning the World Cup was a special moment. What was that weekend like with John? You two seemed to just click straight away.
Yeah, I've always been a big friend of John. Anyway, I've always, practice. I've helped him out in the past with some practice routines to build his confidence up and stuff like that. Just passed that on to him, and we just gel and clicked, and it was an honour to play, darts with him. He's such a lovely, lovely guy, an amazing dart player, and he carried me all the way through the whole tournament. So, I'd done the odd bit, but he done all the hard work.
We were chatting on our show after the World Cup about how Hendo would go after winning the World Cup. Would it be similar to Johnny Clayton and Rise, or be like another of my favourite players, Ko Stompy and slip away? Hendo missed out on the Worlds, but he's kept his tour card for this year. Do you see him kicking on this year?
I hope so. I hope he does. He's capable of doing it easily. But, darts is a hard game, and people just like beating champions. And obviously we're World Cup champions, and then people out there just don't care who you are. So it's a very difficult game.
On the subject of Scotland, two players that we need to mention off the back of the Worlds. William Borland winning his first round with a 9-darter. You've seen a lot in darts, but what was your reaction when you saw that?
I was watching it. I was on the same night, wasn't I? I was waiting, and it was unbelievable. Wow, when to do it? That was the best time to do it, wasn't it? Oh my God! But yeah, what a reaction from him. But I've seen Willie play before, and he's such a good player. He's still learning, and he's a player for the future.
Alan Suter making the last 16 on his Ali Pali debut. It's been an impressive first year for him on the tour. What have you made of how he's got on so far, while also still working as well?
Yeah, white man. I really like him. I introduced myself to him at the beginning of the year. I think it was in Bolton. Welcomed him over. Well done getting your tour card and everything. And then he ended up beating me. I think he's beat me 3 times this year. It's always been pretty close as well. What a dart player. He's really, 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 really good. And he runs the youth academy, the junior darts academy up in Scotland as well. And obviously he's firefighter and he trains dogs as well, doesn't he? He's what can't he do?
I don't know where he gets the time to do all of it. Well,
yeah.
Back to you though, and after a few early exits on TV after the World Cup, we saw you back in the business end of events, the final, the Grand Slam. Then you won the Players Championship finals. That 62 finish with the one dart double 16. Ryan Searle waiting on 24 in the decider. That must have felt good.
Obviously it felt amazing. I've done pretty well at the tournament, beat some good players on the way through, some form players as well, and obviously Ryan was one of them form players. Johnny Clay and MBG started playing some good darts again. So that gave me the confidence to go into going into the World Championships. And I've never done well in the Players Championships apart from obviously semi-finals the year before I lost against Merv when it was played behind closed doors. But it was good to be back at Minehead and in front of about 4,000 mad people. Yeah, it's great.
Well, let's get on to this latest world title win. You kick things off with wins over Ryan Meikle, Damon Hett, Ryan Searle to get into the last 8. How are you feeling coming back on New Year's Day for that last stretch? Because it is such a long tournament played over those 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's good to obviously win your first game before the Christmas, and then as I say, it just feels like a different tournament again when you go back, and then obviously you're there. I don't know how many days I was there afterwards. But it was just like the more worrying thing was all the COVID that was going around with the players and the players dropping here, there, and everywhere. And we were trying so hard. Father-in-law Paul and Joe. And we was like, if we had deliveries, we'd wash hands as soon as we get deliveries, and then when you've opened it up, wash hands again, and then obviously once you've eaten and you packed it all away, wash hands again. It's just like you have to be so careful. And then every time I'm taking a test, I'm going, oh, please be okay, please, because you want to be in the World Championships, and it's obviously not very nice, having them nervous thoughts and. Even though you've done everything and stuff like that, but yes, it was a horrible time.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that. The virus obviously playing its part with 3 players unfortunately testing positive and forced out. We saw you wearing the mask on the walk-on, and what you just said there, it sounds like you took every precaution that you could so that you weren't going to get tested positive. Yeah,
that's all you can do, can't you? There's so many fans that want to. Signatures on the walk-on and have a quick photo and everything with you, and you just can't. You can't take that risk. Some of them understand, but some of them, got a bit funny with it. But it's our living. It's the World Championship. You can't make them mistakes.
Absolutely. Well, after the New Year's Eve break, you came back, you beat Callum Ridds in a thriller, then you beat Gary Anson in a thriller, and you said that game against Gary was your best performance ever. What was it that you were most proud of about that game? Because it looked like a proper battle on the stage between you two.
Yeah, well, that game was just unbelievable. It was just like, obviously, I tried to get as many sets lead before, Gary actually kicked in, because I knew he was playing well in them other sets, and I was like just nicking them. And hitting the right shots at the right time to win the sets and stuff like that. But I knew he was going to come back like a train, and it's just like it was just going to be 180s after 180s and everything like that. But I managed to keep in front of him, and it was just great. It was great being in the match. It was just like it was hitting tons of trebles. I think I hit 24 180s, didn't I? Something like that. I think he had 15, 16 180s. So it must have been great for TV and great for the crowd. So, I just enjoyed it because, obviously because I won. Even if I'd lost that game, it would have been, wow,
We loved watching it. And the next day you're back for the final. That was your third world final. Obviously, you'd been in one in 2014. You'd won your next one. Preparation-wise, coming off the back of that semi-final the night before the final, not until 8 o'clock, 8:15. How does the preparation go on that finals day?
The night before, it was like, I thought, I'll go to sleep pretty easily, as of the final before. I couldn't sleep all night because, it was just like crazy thinking I'm in the final again, blah, blah, blah. But this time I thought, no, this is, I'll get to sleep pretty easy. Now I'll just lay there for I had about 2.5 hours sleep. Because the adrenaline was like going, oh God, I'm in the final again. Oh. So I tried to stay in bed as late as possible. I think it was about 9 o'clock I got up, 9:30. And then obviously showered, ready, get the hair done, obviously. And have a bite to eat, and then get to the venue and just do lots of media stuff, and then practiced and more practice.
And I'm sure you've seen the stats doing the rounds, but from 5-4 down in sets, 2-0 down in legs, you won 9 of the next 10 legs, averaging 113. I'm sure I speak for a lot of our listeners when I say, how did you do that?
It's just don't give up. And it's just, I knew I had the game in me, and it was just like it wasn't quite happening throughout the whole match. I wasn't finding it because I was moving. I feel like I was moving my body too much, my head too much on the release of the dart. It wasn't smooth, but later on when I got under more and more pressure, it was actually. And when I stopped telling myself off in my head, I was more. I don't know. When I got more under pressure, I got more relaxed and more focused, and that just tightened the darts up, and they weren't going everywhere. And it was nice, started to group nicely. So that's just the concentration, and obviously all the hours of practice you do before, and remembering what you've done in practice, and bringing it up on stage.
Definitely. Well, that was your second world title. Did it feel any different, the emotion straight after that double 16 goes in? George Noble, same game shot in the match to when you won the first one against Michael?
Obviously the first one is just like, because it's the first one, isn't it? So, this one still felt really, really, really special, and it was, but, it was a lot harder because we didn't ask our guests to come down. Because of the COVID situation and stuff like that, so we could have had guests, but we don't want them to come down because of COVID. They getting COVID or us getting COVID, so so it was only like Joe and her dad who was there to support me again.
Yeah, I was going to touch on those two, your wife Jo and her dad Paul, on stage with you after to celebrate the win with the trophy. How much of a support have those two in particular been in your career? Because we always see them in the crowd.
Yeah, they're always there for me. Even if Paul going to the shops and stuff like this, and go and get food, and and cooking the food sometimes late at night when we get back, and just stuff in general. And drives me places when Joe can't drive because of her back and stuff like that. And obviously Joe's my manager, and my wife, my therapist, he's there for everything, and the hairdresser, she's there for when I don't win tournaments, when I'm down, and she's there to pick me up, and then she's there when we put all the hard work and we win. So it's just it's great to have them both.
Well, you're on a massive high now, and I know the money side of it doesn't interest you, but I remember you telling me about how when you were unemployed for 4 or 5 years, living off £14 a week, you couldn't afford to enter tournaments. Now you're the first player to pocket that record, 500 grand twice. Back then, would you have believed something like that was possible?
No, no, not at all. But it's just living your dream. You just believe in yourself, with just all the practice and your dedication, wanting to become a world champion, and as long as you got that inside you and you don't stop believing, then why not?
You talk about the practice and dedication. How soon did you get back on the practice board when you got home to East Anglia after the final?
threw some darts the following day. Yeah, the following day. So.
And everyone who's picked up a dart, they obviously practice at home, dream of becoming a world champion. What's that feeling like when you get home after becoming world champion and you have a throw on your board at home again?
What's it feel like? We have to. To be honest, you have to get just on with the next tournament the following year. Just get on to practice your next one. You've done that one. You've ticked that in your box, and just get on with the next one. You know, you don't live on the past on that bit. So.
You also said after the win about how you have a target on your back again now as the world champion. It reminded you of when you wanted to beat the likes of Eric Bristow, Bob Anderson in exhibitions. Do you have any stories from those early days of playing those legends in local events exhibitions?
Not really, but I've just been really nervous against them and stuff like that, and just in awe of the guys of what they've done for darts and the game, and I think and now I'm one of them, so hopefully I can carry on winning, carry on picking up more titles, and before I even think of retiring.
Let's finish up by looking ahead then. And when we spoke after the match play, I informed you that no Scotsman had ever been world number one in the PDC. You're well aware now that you're very close to going price for that top spot. You must fancy ticking that milestone off the list now, given how close you are.
Yeah, most definitely. That's definitely my target this year. I think I'll automatically go to number one in middle of February, I think, because of Gezi defending one of the Europeans. So I'll automatically go to number one. But yeah, I want to have many battles with Gezi this year, and they should be interesting. Should be great darts.
It's around a month before the Masters and the start of the new season. I know you said you've got a wedding coming up next week. How do you plan on spending these next few weeks? Will you try and get away on holiday, or is it just going to be relaxing at home with the family?
I'll just be at home relaxing with the family. I don't want to go on holiday. I don't want to catch COVID for the first lot of tournaments, because straight after that we got the Premier League. So no, just keep safe, keep at home, and that's it, and just get on the board.
Definitely. Well, a big game that we've got to look forward to is, of course, our rematch. Now you've won a second world title. Surely now you want to continue the trend of doing things twice and beat me for a second time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll have to definitely organise something. So, yeah, we'll get something sorted.
Good man. And lastly, obviously the wedding for your daughter next week. I have to ask, if the DJ plays Don't Stop the Party, will you be on the dance floor?
Yeah, I'll be walking out the friggin' door.
Brilliant. Well, Peter, it's a pleasure to chat to you. Really appreciate you taking out so much of your time to have a chat with us. Congratulations again on the second world title, and wish you all the best this your second year as world champion.
Okay, mate. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks to Peter for joining us. Now continuing our chat, looking back on the World Championship. A lot of talk about the Ali Pali crowd over the last 3 weeks. What did you make of the crowd? Did they cross the line at times?
I think they did. And we saw something that I guess we've seen it occasionally, particularly on the Euro Tour, where you would see people cheering just based on nationality or even what country you're representing. But it seemed to go a step further. And on the Euro Tour, to some extent, it makes sense because you only have usually those 4 representatives, maybe a couple more when it's in the Netherlands, because some of the players will be seeded or qualified by other means. But you don't see that many. And actually in the Netherlands, it's usually not that bad. There might be cheering, but there's not usually booing. You've seen a little bit in Germany and some other places where there'll be occasional booing, but it's only a few players. And I can understand that when you have 1 or 2 players in the field from your country and the home country, you're cheering it on, especially when it's not at a major event. But half the field is British, and most of those are English. And to be openly booing players who are generally really popular, like Peter Wright, solely because the opponent is English, just doesn't make sense when that is pretty much every match. This is not a competition based on nationality. This is an individual competition where each of them are representing themselves and trying to compete for themselves. And it just goes a step too far when it's every single match. That said, the booing did die out near the end, and that's because you started, when you get to the quarterfinals, semifinals, final stages, the people are tending, at least more of them tend to be darts fans because the more expensive tickets than you will see in the earlier rounds. So it wasn't as bad, although there still was some booing. But some of those earlier round matches where you're seeing players, very often the only representative from a country who isn't even a full-time darts player, who's just there because they qualified, getting booed, just went a step too far, especially when it's solely because of the country or the flag next to their name. That said, it was great to have the crowd back, and most of the fans weren't doing that. They were the most vocal ones because, well, you can hear it when there's 30 people all saying the exact same thing. That tends to be pretty darn loud, and most of the fans weren't doing that. But it's something that needs to be, it needs to be dealt with, because this is not a national event. This is a world championship, a world event, and players should not be being booed solely because of the flag next to their name. I thought it went too far. But again, it should not detract from the tournament overall, because it was just a few small people who lost the plot.
Yeah, they definitely did. And just starting off, really touching on what Matt Porter, the PDC chief executive, said on TalkSport before the final. He was asked about the crowd, and he said, "You don't want someone to be picked on for where they're from. That's unacceptable. It's been a different dynamic with the crowd. Normally there's a third of tickets that are sold to non-UK fans, but our ticket data shows that only a handful have made the trip from outside the UK this year." He wouldn't say that the atmosphere is here to stay. He reckons it's going to go back to that international, multi-cosmopolitan crowd where you get a different flavour and a bit more balanced atmosphere. And I certainly hope so, because, yeah, I think the crowd definitely did overstep the mark at times, and particularly the going price games, some of the chants that were coming out from some of the crowd. I'm not going to say it was all the crowd. I'm not going to tar them all with the same brush, but some of the crowd, some of the songs that they were coming out with, there's just no place for it. It's just not acceptable. And we saw on the Sky broadcast as well, Stuart, Pyke, Wayne Mardle, Laura Woods, the presenter, they're all condemning the crowd for what they were doing. And it's all well and good saying that on the broadcast, but we can do what we want at home. We can shout and scream at the TV, but for those in the crowd, they're the ones that need to know about it. So for me, I'd love to see something done about it, because you want to have the atmosphere, but there needs to be a happy medium, doesn't there? I think they did cross the line, and we're never going to go back to the days of, I was watching some of the darts golds that were running where it was in the Circus Tavern, and you had the late Bruce Spendley stopping play to remind the crowd to give the best of order. That's not going to happen, but there needs to be something done to make sure that the players aren't being abused and they're not being called certain things, because they're all up there trying to achieve a dream and provide for their families. And if they're getting that level of abuse, I think it's just not on. So yeah, it was a shame to see that side of it come through this year. But as Matt Porter says as well, hopefully we'll see next year more fans from outside the UK, like Germany, the Netherlands, come over, because the times that I've been before as well, you've seen a lot of darts fans from all around the world to come over and make the trip, make that pilgrimage to Ali Pali. So hopefully the crowd will be different next year. Doesn't detract from the fact that we did get the crowd that we did, and hopefully something will be done so that we don't see that again.
I'm glad you only want the fans from Germany and Netherlands. You don't want me to make another journey over.
I'd love you to.
Let's look back on the tournament. How would you rate the 2022 PDC World Championship overall?
Well, this is another of our questions of the week that we've put out on Twitter as well, and we've done it in a rating out of 10. If you want to give it a rating out of 10, or if you'd rather grade it A, B, C or below, or whatever, then feel free to. But at the moment, it's 10 out of 10, the best ever World Championship. We've got 11% of our listeners going with that. 8 or 9 out of 10, 57%. 6 or 7 out of 10, 30%. 5 or below going with 2%. So the majority going with that 8 to 9 bracket. And I tend to agree with the majority of our listeners there, because, okay, before the Christmas break, I was probably looking towards maybe a 6 or a 7. There were some great moments during the first half of the tournament, if you like. We've got to mention the Willie Ball and 9-darter again. Was it the best 9-darter ever? You certainly thought it was. A lot of our listeners agreed with you on that one. But there were some great moments in that first half. The quality-wise, I was talking about 9-darters there, but overall, the first half of the tournament, and it's always hard, isn't it, to gauge the tournament, looking at it overall with 96 players in it. There's a lot of darts to watch over those 3 weeks, but I think what we saw after the Christmas break, it definitely pushed the number up for me from a 6 or a 7 to a solid 8 out of 10. We touched on it in our last episode. Some of the games that we were seeing, it's just every day we were saying, is that the best game of the tournament? Oh no, there's another one there. You had the Going Price, Kim Hybrecht's game, Rob Cross, Darryl Gurney, and of course Michael Smith, Johnny Clayton, and even the last 3 days as well, the Going Price, Michael Smith, Callum Ridds, Peter Wright quarterfinals, the Peter Wright, Gary Anderson semi-final, and even the final. I know both players were disappointed with their performances, but I was looking back at the stats. Both had high 90s averages, 98, 99, 41, 180s between them. And some of the shots that we were seeing during the game, and as we've said before, the finish to the game as well from Peter Wright was outstanding. One of the best finishes, if not the best finish to wrap up a World Championship. That's one for Christopher Kempf. If someone's averaged more than 113 in the last 10 legs of a World Final, I want to clip and I want to watch that, because that will be pretty special as well. But for me, I think what we saw after the break definitely pushes it up. And there were some great stories, wasn't there? As there always is from the World Championship. Florian Hempel with that big shock earlier, knocking out the fifth seed Dimitri van der Berg, but just how well he played in that game. Raymond Smith making the last 16, Alan Suter making the last 16. The big finishes he was pulling out to win some of the games, the 1-4-4 against Mensa, the 1-3-6 against Jose. And we should mention as well, Callum Ridds, the last time wearing the weekly Dartscast logo, getting to the quarterfinals, a great run for him as well. So yeah, for me, even though we had the three players pull out as well, which was a real shame and did detract from the tournament, I think the players, by and large, stepped up after the Christmas break and we were treated to a real feast of darts. And for me, I'm going to go with an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I might go 8.5 out of 10, but it's pretty similar to what you said there. And the big thing was not just after Christmas, but particularly after New Year. You mentioned the big matches that came through in the third round and fourth round for that matter. But there were also more than the fair share of disappointing matches over that week, as well as 3 matches that never happened due to COVID withdrawals, which we discussed on the last show. But what I think elevated this from being a relatively good World Championships to a very good World Championship overall was the play from the quarterfinals on. And yes, there were 2 bad quarterfinals, but there were also 2 absolute classics. That Michael Smith Gerwyn Price match, which I think still, after the tournament is done, was the match of the tournament, one of the best matches ever on the Ali Pali stage. But also that Peter Wright Callum Ridds match was damn good as well. But then both semifinals were really good, including that Peter Wright Gary Anderson match, which, I mean, I think you can just look at the averages, and both of them averaging 104 and 10, almost 103 across 10 sets, tells you how well they were playing and how Gary Anderson had to throw that to avoid getting whitewashed because of how well Peter Wright was doing, and managed to get 4 sets off Peter Wright, despite the fact that Peter Wright was clearly the better player on the day. That's how well, though, they were both playing to make sure that match could go nearly the distance. And then the final. Okay, neither of them averaged 100. It's the first time since the very first World Championships I watched 10 years ago that neither player averaged over a ton, but they were just short of it. And remember, that's over 50 legs. And really, you might as well say it was over 51 legs, because the second leg of that match was a 28-darter. That was 2 legs in one. Take that leg out, they're basically both on the ton. They both averaged nearly a ton. As you said, they both played well off their best. It was a match that looked like they were both laboring, and they still averaged 99 and 98. And it was a very, very even match over 50 legs. It was a great final because of the fact that they were able to do that, despite the fact that you know that both of them had other gears that they could have found. Peter Wright did find for the last 10 legs. I think overall it was a very good World Championships, and we were treated over those last 3 days to the finish that we deserved. And I think it made up for the fact that there were a lot of matches prior to that, as there always are, but I think more so than normal. There were a lot of subpar performances and a lot of players who just couldn't find their top gear, just with everything going on in the world right now. But it was made up for over those final 3 days, especially those 2 quarterfinals, as well as both semifinals and the final.
Now move on to our next guest on this week's show. It is a chat with the Sky Sports pundit and commentator, the former champion of the world, Mark Webster. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the Sky Sports pundit and commentator, Mark Webster. Thanks for the time, Mark. How you doing?
Yeah,
No worries. Yeah, I'm good. Good. Got darts withdrawal symptoms a little bit, but no, I'm good. I'm all right.
I was just about to ask you that. You've had 3 weeks of non-stop darts at Ali Pali, covering it for Sky Sports. What's it been like since you've been home? Any symptoms? Have you been playing Chase the Sun for a speaker every 15 minutes?
No, you know what? I've been all right. There's an interesting look on social media, reading about stuff, but I think it was a good event, and to everyone involved as well. It wasn't an easy event to sort of put together, but I think it went okay. There's a few little hiccups, obviously, with a few players having to withdraw, but on the whole, I think it was a successful event and a right outcome in the end as well. I think the best player won.
We see the interest in darts pick up when the World Championship's on. People going out buying dartboards, sets of darts, trying the game out. As a former World Champion yourself, coming back from an event like that, does it give you the bug to get back on the board straight away?
Do you know what? It does, I've got, I'm going to sort my dart around. My dart room is cold, Alex. So this time of year I need to sort of get some better heating in. But no, I always like a throw. I've never sort of lost a bug. But it's just, competitively I haven't done a lot. So maybe step that up a little bit this year.
The last time we had you on was just after the Premier League, Johnny Clayton claiming the title. Since then we've seen Peter Wright, Johnny Clayton, Going Price all hoover up the majors. Going into the Worlds, were they your 3 favourites for the title?
Yeah, with Michael as well. I said you couldn't look beyond the big 3. Do you know what? I had my reservations about Johnny, but do you know what? I think if he'd have beat Michael Smith, he'd have been in the final. And it's easy to say, but there's still a couple of rounds. Johnny was ready to win. The Michael Smith game was just unreal, but I think Johnny will win more titles this year, and I think they'll get shared round them sort of players. I'd like to think Michael Smith will finally get over the line. But no, it's an exciting year ahead, and I hope that it's a relatively normal darting year as well, so in terms of crowds and things like that. Just a normal calendar, so it's not too disruptive, and let the players do what they can.
Let's hope so. Well, there's a few weeks between the Players' Championship finals and the World Championship. We spoke to Wayne Mardle about how the prep for a Worlds compares from being a pundit to being a player. What does the prep look like leading up to being on the Sky team for the biggest tournament?
It's good, Do you know what? I never find any of it a real chore. There's a lot to prep, but I enjoy it, and I'm part of a good team as well. And anything that I haven't got on the notes, Wayne will send my way, and I'm Party and everyone else. We're just I think we click together well. So the prep's good, but it's enjoyable. It's exciting, isn't it? And then as you go through as well, through the rounds, you can reference the previous round and things like that. So it's an enjoyable tournament to work on, and it's kind of a bit frustrating when it comes to an end, because I do like the early rounds, the hustle and bustle of players, seeing players you don't necessarily see during the year. So no, I thought I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the challenge of it as well.
We've got some listener questions touching on events of the last 3 weeks, but we've got to start before then with the champion, haven't we? Peter Wright, the 113 average for the last 10 legs to sweep the title from Michael Smith. What did you make of that surge to the title from Peter?
Yeah, it's incredible. I fell for Michael Smith, but Peter's got that in his locker. I actually commented on his last game, Michael Smith, and he did something similar from sort of 12-8 down. Peter Wright was just, apart from those 2 sets against Heta, where they had those dodgy darts, he looked in control, and do you know what? He's a player. He's always. I'm really pleased for him, because I remember when I first joined the PDC, Pete wasn't getting any luck, and he was losing first, second round every week, and he'd say to me, "I'm practicing hard," and you're thinking, will it come? And he's been so patient, and getting his title so late on in life. It's an inspiration to other players. It's not all about youth and the players coming through. The old heads' experience, and Peter Wright's got abundance of experience, and he's been a phenomenal player this year, and he's been the best player this year. Johnny Clayton's been great, but the manner in which he won the match play, the Worlds, especially the match play, just shows how dominant he could be. And I think we're going to see more titles from Peter Wright.
Definitely, yeah, it's been a great story. And off the hockey, a lot of talk about the crowd at Ali Pali. I know you spoke about it on the Sky broadcast, a few of your other colleagues did as well. We obviously only see the broadcast at home, but what was it like in the venue when you're hearing them chants, especially during the Going Price game? Is it something you think that's going to be looked at?
I don't know how you can. They went too far, they did, and it wasn't just Going Price. I don't want it to be just I'm sticking out for my Welsh players and fellow Welsh players, but the Scottish lads are copying it as well. And do you know what? Cheer your favourite, and and I get that you go there, you want to have fun, but the offensive chanting was too much. Gedwin copped it. It was just more disappointing. It was his young daughters and his wife were in the crowd, and I don't want it to deter players from bringing their family with them to these big events. But I don't know how you manage it, because the PDC got security involved, and they do their best, but it's a large number to control. And do you know what? Let's not hammer the crowd throughout. there were some really bad nights. But there were some good sessions as well where they behaved. But yeah, when Gedwin was on, it went too far. And yeah, it'd be nice if it was addressed, but I think Gedwin dealt with it, as did other players, and you just crack on, and that's all the players can do for now.
Yeah, let's get on to the good times from the tournament, because there was plenty of highlights from start to finish. What moments will you remember most from this World Championship?
The ball in 9 darts for me was incredible. It's just the game as well. The actual match itself was incredible. It didn't need a 9 darts. So that was fun. A 9 darts to win a match as well. It's fantastic. The Smith-Clayton game, the Smith-Price game. You just on obviously Peter Wright winning the title, but I just think it was an incredible event. The Price Hybrex game as well. I mean, I could list you loads. It was just a good event, and it had edge of your seat moments. And I think what was good, when there was a little disruption where we lost a player, so we had a smaller session, generally one of those games would turn into a thriller and help the session that had lost the game. So I think it was just a great World Championship, and hats off to the players as well. I think they dealt with it well, and yeah, it was a memorable World Championship.
And a lot of speculation looking ahead about the Premier League. The PDC haven't announced anything yet. We know the opening night is due to be in Cardiff this time next month, but there are currently restrictions in place. What is the situation right now in Wales?
I'm not 1,000,000% sure. I know in hospitality, I mean, this is a lower scale, but I know that you go out in groups of 6 again now, and I don't know. I know, because I work with Adam Smith, a boxing broadcaster, and he's had to move their boxing fight, Chris Eubank, to out, because it was in Cardiff. I'm going somewhere with this, and it was in Cardiff in January. That's been moved to February, but I'm led to believe that hopefully in February things will be okay. But of all the places to pick first, but do you know what? You're thinking it's a great start, isn't it? The way the Welsh players have played last year, get in Wales, get the crowd buzzing, because there's a good crowd there, and I just hope it's not disrupted too much. A, because I think all the players like playing there, and B, Johnny and Gedwin will enjoy it as well, and I hope it's sorted by the time it comes around, because I know that the Premier League announcement's been delayed just because of little tweaks they need to do with venues and things, but it needs to be the weekly roadshow again. None of this blocking 5 and 6 in Milton Keynes. It needs to be back to normal, and hopefully that'll be the case.
Fingers crossed. Well, we've got some listener questions for you. The first one comes from Phil Haig. He says, obviously hypothetical, but having seen everyone else's performances, how far do you reckon MVG would have gone without the positive test?
Do you know what? I think his draw was okay. He'd have definitely got to, I think, quarters or semis. I mean, yeah, semis, I'd say. He was, we did learn a lot from him. He played Chas Barstow, so hypothetical, I think he'd have got to the semis.
Next one comes from Kevin Fitzpatrick. He wants to ask you about what it was like living with Stuart Pyke as part of the Muswell Hillbillies during the World Championship.
Oh, you nuisance. Yeah, oh my God, no. Do you know what? We have a good laugh. He is a bit of a pest, but we have a great laugh, and we have a good bond in the comms box as well. He's a good guy, but oh my God, he can moan. He likes a moan, but if he wasn't moaning, I'd worry about him. So it's just a normal. But no, it was all right. It's good. I think the environment you work in, you need that relaxed atmosphere and a bit of banter away. So it was all right. It was all right. But he is motivating me. By living with him for 4 years, it's motivating me to try and qualify for the Worlds again. Even if I don't want to get through one round, at least it's a couple of nights in the Players' Hotel instead, isn't it?
That's all the motivation you need.
Yeah, he's my biggest motivation, and he doesn't even know it.
Next one comes from Carl Redden. He says, how did you feel going into your Lakeside debut in 2007, and then after losing to Tony Eccles 3-0, all the sets going 3-2, what was the mindset going into 2008 when you were top seed and you went all the way?
The mindset the year after was just, I had a good chance. I was playing better, but it's first of all my friends came down to watch me the year before, and there's this, and I thought, you know what, they're coming down first on the Saturday, I just want to win and get to go and have a drink with them at night and just sort of enjoy that one round, and then we'll go from there. And then obviously as the draw sort of went on, my next draw was favourable. I didn't play well, but I kind of knew I'd win that game. And then it was just, once Gary Anderson was out, even though I was number 1 seed, I was my favourite, I knew then I'd fit in Adams and Whitlock 3 consecutive days. No time to think. I was only a kid as well, and I knew I could win. I don't think I was the best player in the world when I won it, but I just was the best player that week, and that's what it takes sometimes to win an event. And I don't think people could complain that I won it that week. And I was just relaxed about everything. I was so relaxed that I was almost late for the final. I was in there, and the crowd were in there. Yeah. But no, it's completely different now. Different pressures in life. But no, I felt I had a chance. I didn't think I'd win it, but I'm glad I did, because it was a brilliant week.
And the next one comes from Tommy, who's as a former world champion yourself. What's the difference in mentality when you're defending a championship compared to going to take it off someone?
Yeah, when you're defending it, I found it tough because you just want everything to be like the year before, and I went there as a different player, and I wasn't as in form, and you worry, you're nervous. And yeah, it is hard. I do the PDC one particularly when you go back. That first night, isn't it? I mean, that's tough, but you know, you go there, and because you're the world champion now, I think you go there and you've just got to say, look, whatever happens in this tournament, it cannot deduct the memory from the year before, and that's what you've got to say, and just go there calm and not put pressure on yourself. That would be my advice. Probably advice I should have listened to when I was defending champion, but hey, I was nowhere near the best player that year, and I didn't deserve to win the title, but I reckon had I hung around in the BDO a bit longer, I think I'd have won it again. But I just made the move, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah, you made the move. And the next question from Matty Rogers touches on the move to the PDC. When you beat Phil Taylor in the 2011 quarterfinals of the World Championship, did you believe that you could go all the way? And what went wrong in the semis against Adrian Lewis?
Yeah, I thought I could win. I thought I could beat Adrian, and I wasn't a million miles off either. I think it was on throw. He was 5-4 up, and I missed 3 darts at double, and he broke me, and it was as simple as that, really. It was he was good. Wow, he was good, but yeah, I thought I could win, and I wanted to play Gary in the final. It didn't come about, and probably that was my biggest opportunity missed in the PDC, because I'm not close in the World Championship since, and obviously not qualified for 4 years, so yeah, it was just one of them. I thought I could win, and it just didn't happen, and lessons learned. But again, it was a brilliant tournament, which I really enjoyed it, and had a great knock-on effect for my career at the time, so I'm not full of too many regrets in that event. I obviously would have liked to get the final, but it is what it is.
And back to the future, I know when we spoke last time in the summer you weren't sure about Q School this year. It might be a bit too soon. Have you decided yet if you're going to be going to Q School this week?
No, I'm not. I missed the entry anyway. I mean, I was convinced I would go because I've been playing that online stuff, but then you just don't get time to practice when the Worlds is on. I've done the Grand Slam, Minehead, so I'm going to manage things a bit better. I'm definitely going to go next year, 1,000,000%. I just want to have a go, unless anything drastically dips my form, but my form's pretty steady. Look, my form isn't going to win me titles in a minute, but I think it's enough to get a card, and the PDC just jumped the money up, so you can win one game on the tour, get £750. It's just a massive opportunity. I mean, I don't want to go there to just be a journeyman, but I've got a year to work on my game, and there's so many other darts you can play, so I'll try and keep myself competitive this year, and then we'll go next year.
Yeah, that's what I was going to touch on. Q School might not be on the cards, but there is plenty of darts, hopefully, for the rest of 2022. What have you got your eye on darts-wise that you'd like to play in?
I'll play on the online stuff. I hope I'm involved with the company that runs that, my management team. So obviously I can't play in that till probably gone May, because I'll be working on the Premier League. But yeah, I'll play in that, and then getting back to basics of playing in local things. And I don't know what's on the WDF calendar. I might look at some of their stuff. I'm not going to travel. It'll have to be pretty close, but we'll see. It's look, I haven't got a plan, Alex, and if I get offered things work-wise, I'll take it. But yeah, I'll play some more, and I'll practice a lot more this year anyway. So practicing's key, and I've got a good lad who plays in my local league I can practice with as well. So hopefully we can sharpen each other up.
Good to hear. And lastly, if we were to put on our own tournament for the Sky team, you had yourself, Wayne Mardle, John Part and Laura Turner. You were the 4th seed. You had to pick a partner from the rest of the Sky team to be your partner. Who would it be?
I thought you said that was the 4th seed then. I was going to say, what? With the 4 seeds.
Yes.
Who would I pick? I don't know, I'd pick Pyke, because then he can't moan at me. My team's got to encourage me, hasn't he? So yeah, I'll take Pyke as my partner.
How would you rate your chances of going all the way in that event?
Fancy it, yeah. And you, I've seen Stu throw. Get to a final anyway. It's only winning one round anyway.
Yeah, you definitely got a good chance. Well, Mark, it's a pleasure to chat to you. Really appreciate you taking out the time after the World Championship to chat with us, and wish you all the best for 2022.
Yeah, good man. Thanks, Alex. Cheers.
Thanks again to Mark for joining us, and we'll finish up our chat discussing the lineup for the Premier League. Oh wait, no, we won't be doing that because there was no announcement for the Premier League. It usually is after the World Championship final, Barry Hearn or Matt Porter will come on the Sky Sports broadcast and tell us the names of players that are going to be involved in the Premier League this year. But the announcement has not been made yet. Why do you think that was?
I think the popular opinion as to why is most likely why. And we've heard, people from Sky as well say that they want Fallon in. We've heard managers and other insiders want Fallon. Of course, obviously there are those that don't want her in. But I think the PDC, and fairly, I think, have decided they're not going to put her in unless she wins a tour card. So delaying to after Q School in that regard makes sense, regardless of whether you think she deserves a spot or not. Delaying it to find out if she has a tour card makes sense because assuming that is what they want to do. And there is a good argument for it. She is the most marketable player in the world, or at least very close to Michael Van Gerwen and Peter Wright at the top of the sport in terms of marketability because of who she is and what she has done when she's been given chances. And there's no reason to think she won't rise to the level needed to be competitive because, other than this year at the World Championship side, but everyone has a bad match, she has risen to the level every time we've seen her. She did it at the Grand Slam, nearly making the semifinals after beating some very good players. She did it at the Danish Dart or the Nordic Darts Masters, making the final and having opportunities to beat Michael Van Gerwen in the final. She obviously did it at the World Championships a couple years ago when she beat Menzisovic, when she beat Ted Evans, and when she pushed Chris Dobie, who was having a breakthrough season, to 6 sets in a best out of 7 match, playing very well in the process. So if the goal is to give her that chance to be in the Premier League, but making sure she wins a tour card first, the decision makes perfect sense. If it's something else, I'm not sure I understand what it could be. And maybe it's that they don't know yet what's going on with Omicron, and they don't want to put the field together before they know whether the event can even go on as an international event in front of a crowd in February and March. That could be another reason, but I feel like that would have been something that you could have come out and said, we want to see what's going on first and figure out if we might have to rearrange fixtures or rearrange the structure for a year because of what's going on. If that was the case, I think they would have said something, which brings me back to it's most likely about Fallon. If that's the case, let's see how she does at Q School. If she gets a tour card and she's in, well, then we know that I and most everyone else was right. If she doesn't get a tour card, I don't think she gets in. And then it becomes a question who the field is. And you have to think it's the top 10 if they keep it to the format they had last year and what the format was without the challengers. If it has the challengers, I don't know. Maybe Jose, despite being reigning runner-up, gets left out. Maybe Dimitri gets left out, though he would be very hard done if that's the case. We'll see what happens, but I think it comes down right now to does Fallon get a tour card? Because if she does, I think she gets in, and that's why it was postponed. But we'll have to hang tight for a little bit.
Just looking at what Matt Porter did put out on Twitter this morning, he said, just a friendly, helpful tip from me. Honestly, don't waste your time trying to guess why we haven't announced the Premier League details yet. You'll never get it right. So we are wasting our time here. But I agree. I personally think that the top 10 is the way to go if it is going to be 10 straight players. But there is a lot of talk on social media among darts fans that the PDC are waiting to see how Fallon Sherritt gets on at Q School, which of course starts this Sunday. If she gets that tour card, does she get a spot in the Premier League? I think if she doesn't get the tour card, she doesn't get a spot in the Premier League. I personally think that if she'd have won that World Series against Michael Van Gerwen in the final, she'd have been given a spot regardless of the tour card. And also think if she'd have beaten Peter Wright in the Grand Slam quarterfinals, that game which went really close, I think she'd have been given a spot regardless of being a tour card holder. But the fact that she went out first round of the World Championship kind of set her back quite a bit for me. And I think, if the PDC are waiting to see if Fallon will get that tour card, it's their right, isn't it? It's their event. They can decide what they want. But for me, I think that the 10 players pick themselves if it is a 10-player lineup. If they're going to shake it up a little bit more, then we'll see if they bring in the challengers, the contenders, or maybe something completely different. We're not going to be able to guess it. But you mentioned it. I personally think the main reason is they're holding back is because of COVID-19 and the impact that it had on the World Championship. We had 3 players test positive, had to pull out during the tournament. You had 3 other players maybe even more. But we know definitely 3, Raymond van Barneveld, Danny Noppert, Kim Hybricks, all test positive after the tournament. And it's having an impact, isn't it? And the PDC, they've put out their calendar for this season from January with the Masters at the end of the month up till the end of October. It's a stacked calendar. You've got the Premier League Thursday nights rolling into the Euro Tours Players' Championships at the weekends. Is the time right for them to bring that back? We just don't know, given the uncertainty there still is around the world, not just in darts, but in all sports. The Premier League football, we've seen games postponed over Christmas. Is something that all of sport, all of the world is going to have to deal with going into 2022, and especially with the Premier League as well. You look at it, you've got, as you said, you've got nights in Holland, Germany, Scotland, Ireland, the opening night in Wales this time next month, and at the minute Wales are pretty tight on their restrictions. So I think they are giving themselves a little bit of time. They've got a little bit of time now after the World Championship to really look at how things are going to progress in this first quarter of the year when the Premier League starts. So for me, I think they're giving themselves a little bit of time to see just how things are going to work for the calendar this year. But I think the Fallon thing, I think that's a genuine shout. If she gets a tour card, then I think they put her in. So that extra bit of time may work in their favour as well. They get to see if she gets a tour card and put her in.
Well, we'll have to see. But until then, anything else for this? Well, I was about to say week, but I think we'll have another episode to preview Q School. So anything else for this half a week?
Yes, that's right. We're going to try and bring out a short episode towards the end of the week when we have the entries for Q School and make a few tips and look ahead to the event. We'll have a few guests as well that are going to be playing in Q School to chat to them ahead of it. But we should say as well, thank you to all our new followers on Twitter. We got quite a lot of followers over the last few weeks during the World Championship. So thanks for following along. And if this is the first time that you've listened, do get in touch. We always like to hear from our new listeners. Our sweepstake that we did for the World Championship, courtesy of Windmail and Red Dragon, the signed sets of darts. Congratulations, Ethan Packard, Stuart Edwards and Archie Sepp234. They are the 3 winners. They're going to all get a signed set of darts. Going Price, Michael Van Goen or Peter Wright set of darts are coming their way. And also we should mention the weekly Dartscast Awards. By the time you're listening to this, we've probably put out our nominations for the awards, and the nominations that you guys are going to be making for the awards as well is going to be open. So check out our Twitter on that, get involved, tweet us your nominations. We'll pick, as always, we'll get the listeners involved all the way through with nominations, and you guys are going to pick the winners as well. So yeah, look forward to that and seeing who gets the winners of our awards again.
Yes, and is this the second year we've done this now, or is it the third? I've lost track of time.
Yeah, this is our second one. So we did it last year, and we've had such a popular demand to bring it back that we are bringing it back.
I knew we did it last year, but I wasn't sure if we'd done it the year before. The last couple of years have all blended together. But now there's no enjoying the darts for a little while because, well, there's a few days without darts. Unfortunately, no Lakeside yet again. Might be in a few months. But there is Q School around the corner, and as Alex said, we'll be back with our Q School preview later this week. It'll be a short episode, but we'll hopefully have a couple people who will be playing at Q School on the show. But until then, hang tight, enjoy not enjoying the darts, get to enjoy the darts once you're done hanging tight.